Hello and welcome to the video. Here I'm just going to be analysing a hand I played in a streamed £5, £5, £10 cash game in a Grosvenor casino. You can see on the screen right now is me playing in that game. I'm just going to quickly run through this hand. First I'm going to go through what my thought process was when I played the hand, and then I'm going to go back through it with a solver, try figure out if I played the hand well, if I could have done something better, and yeah, we'll just go from there. Just to give some context, I was told this game was £5, £5, £10. I could only get 4k together from the casino. I thought it made the most sense for me to have 4 shots of 1k buy-in rather than sit with all of it and then potentially lose a big pot and not be able to stay in the game. I then found out that it was a £20 straddle pretty much every hand straight away, so I was going to then add on, but I was determining, okay, do I just sit with all of this? Do I sit with 2k and then if I bust, sit with 2k again? But I literally just sat down. I don't know anything about a few of these players. I do know some things about some of the players. I get the impression Seat 1 is here to have fun, he's here to gamble, but I've not played with him before. Folds to me, I'm in the £20 straddle, he's in the £40 straddle, so I'm effectively 25 big blinds, although there's kind of a debate on how many big blinds it really is when it's gone straddle, double straddle, triple straddle, because obviously it's not a conventional spot, but it kind of operates a little bit like a tournament where it's essentially £40 big blind, it's folded to me in the small blind, and there's an ante because there's all this other dead money that's already in the pot. So that's the way that I approached it, because obviously I've studied tournaments a lot and I know a lot more about 20 big blinds than probably more than 100 big blinds, so it kind of suits me. So it folded to me in the small blind here with king 6, and I think I have a choice between limp and raise. I would assume a solver would do both. I think king 6 is a hand that can go into both categories if you do limp, but I think you're going to have to limp fold, which is obviously fine. It's not a great of a hand. Plays well against checkbacks. If he's going to attack very wide versus a limp, I think raising myself might then go up in value. If he's going to call too many hands pre-flop, I think raising could then go up in value too, because he's just going to miss the flop so often. I'm just going to win. I go for an open to 3.5 bigs, which I think is fine, relatively standard. I could have limped too, like I said. And he's asking about my stack.
126 in the bounty, which is super.
And goes for the call with 10-8 offsuit, so I think standard play with the 10-8 offsuit too. I would just call with this hand as well in position. Great price. Although it does say, if I just go back, it says here that there's been a 3-bet and a 4-bet, but it's actually just because the straddles are kind of confusing for them to implement with the stream game. So it's folded to me in the double straddle, and I've opened into the triple straddle, and he's defended.
86
so
in the ladies so far. We'll be streaming the final of that tomorrow.
We get a flop of 10, 8, 4 rainbow. My first thoughts on this board is I definitely don't want a range bet. I'm out of position. I have a relatively wide range blind on blind. I can't just go betting everything out of position. He's going to connect with this board a lot. My hand is also pretty bad. I wasn't actually sure whether this hand would prefer to bet or check, but I thought if he's sticky, if he's got a wider range, it's not going to be the best hand because I don't have that many good barrels, especially having, if you say I have the king of spades, and this is the main reason that I got to check pretty quickly, because I think I at least want to have 2 suits on the board, so then the times that, for example, if I have king of clubs instead here and I bet the flop, then the turn is a club, it's at least a nicer card for me to barrel with that hand. But having the king of spades is going to just interact with hands he always folds, like king 2 through to king 9 of spades, let's say, if maybe king 7 of spades when he doesn't have a pair, so that's a lot of hands always folding. And I just thought it's just a bad hand. He might even start floating with king jack, king queen, king 9. So I'm not going to achieve that much by betting this hand. Ace-high is probably not going to fold yet, so I'm going to have to be double barreling, and I just want better barrels. So I think I was just always going to check fold this hand. I might be proven wrong by the solver, but I think that's the right play.
Brandon just making it 3.5x to go with the king 6 off. A well timed check here though, and Vinny.
He goes for the quick check back here, so I personally wouldn't do this with top 2 pair when the stack to pot ratio is about 3, because I would want to play for stacks, and obviously you still can by checking back because you can raise turn or you can raise rivers and you can still get it in. But just me personally, I had top 2 pair in that seat. I would always be betting. I'd be betting pretty wide as well. I can see why he's checked. He does block the board, and the stacks are shallow enough that it's still 2 bets to get it in. So it doesn't seem unreasonable to me. It's just not the play I would have made. So now we see the 5 of diamonds. So now I need to decide: do I want to? Well, let's just see it like a flow chart. I can either check call, I can check fold, I can check raise, or I can bet, and obviously I can bet numerous different sizes. So going through my head right now is I have a really wide range still because I didn't see bet the flop. I would still have some traps and some check raises and some hands which are now good enough to bet and play for stack. So I could check with, for example, a weak 10 and then play bet jam. I could check with even hands like 6-7 sometimes. I could check with hands that turn 2 pair with the 5. I could just be happy now if I have maybe an 8, like a king 8 type hand and go for 2 streets. There's a lot of hands that I do want to check the flop with and start betting now. I could also have like aces and sets and like traps, etc. So I'm definitely not worried about not having good hands. It's just, is this a hand that is going to go into the bluffing category? And I thought my king high is probably not going to win at showdown very often. So he is going to still have a lot of ace highs. He is still going to have better king high. He's also going to have hands which can now bluff against me and make me fold the best hand sometimes. So if he has, let's say, I don't know, queen 6 suited, if he has a queen 9 that check out the flop, these hands will probably start betting on the turn, and I can't check call. I also don't think my hand is strong enough to check raise because I just have a better gut shot. We're also not very deep, so I don't think that was really an option in my head. So then it's just, do I want to bet or do I want to check fold? And I think I decided having the gut shot, having the diamond in my hand as well, because obviously the 6 of diamonds is going to be a card that will always continue, or it might continue with aggression. So if my opponent has a6 of diamonds, for example, or king 6 of diamonds, these type of hands, they're always going to continue versus a bet. So me having the 6 of diamonds is therefore good. It's also nice to kind of clear out my outs now, because now king 9 I would expect will start folding the turn. King jack probably will just start folding the turn because it doesn't feel quite as comfortable compared to if I'd bet the flop. So I think it does make sense for me to bet this hand. I would have probably bet maybe more often than I should. I might have bet this combo every time, and I'm sure a solver would be a little bit more balanced in that approach. But I did expect the big blind's going to defend really wide. He's going to get to the turn with a really wide range, and just attacking that when I've got good equity. My king's probably live. The 7's obviously going to be live most of the time. Blocking hands that continue, like your 5-6, like your 6-4, like your 6-8, felt like a good combo to bet to me. So I bet with primarily the intention of bluffing a lot of rivers too, because if I do start betting now, if the river's a brick, I can obviously just value jam when I've got a 10. I can potentially even value jam if I have a hand like ace-8, pocket 9s, my traps. So to be honest, I was just planning to bet. If the river's a diamond, I block the diamonds, I'd still go for it. If the river's not a diamond, there's some which are a little bit awkward, but I was probably just going to blast off with this particular hand. So the main thing I was thinking about here, like I got to the conclusion of I want to bet pretty quickly. It's just what's the best bet size, and because I've got £860, there's £300 in the middle, I just want a bet size that comfortably allows me to jam for a similar type size on the river, was my thoughts at least, like a geometric bet size. So I was thinking if I bet between half and 3/4, that will set up a similar amount, like 2/3 pot on the river. So I was thinking I need to bet probably between 200 and 250.
Yes, we've got that 6 in there, obviously blocking the nuts. But the thing is, I think Vinny's always going to fire his double gut shot, 6-7 on the flop.
Again, he could just jam his hand here as well. I think given he's checked out the flop, I can see he's probably just always going to call and take it in position. His hand is really strong. He's probably not going to fold any river, even if it comes to 4 straight, given how he's played the hand. So I think the turn call is, it is what it is. Jam would be fine too.
So we have got an immediate block up to the nuts. Queen of clubs on the river.
So now we get a queen on the river, and this does change things because some of these thinner value bets aren't as comfortable now. I could still have queen 8. I could still have ace 10 or any traps on the flop. I could also river a queen sometimes because I could play a hand like queen 6 the same way and now think that my queen is the nuts and go for a jam. I could have a hand like pocket jacks, maybe it was going for a check raise on the flop. But I think I would imagine my worst value on this river would start with about ace 10 or king 10 for all in. But I might have more than one size, so when the queen changes the dynamics of the board. So I imagine if I was value betting with an 8, that doesn't mean it's likely I'm now going to lose on the queen because not that much changes. Like queen 9, queen jack, get there, they might bet sooner. Jack 9 again might bet sooner, but my opponent probably has a 5 or a 4 or an 8, those type of hands. So I've got a strong 8. I think value betting or check calling those hands does make a lot of sense. So I would actually expect the solver to use more than one sizing on this river. I think it would use a small size with like a weak 10, like some 8x. It might even go as thin as like pocket 6s or ace 5 for a small bet size if that's really small. So then it's just, is my hand a good one to bluff? Is it a spot I ever want to bluff? Well, I mean, if I jam and he snap calls me with ace high, then obviously the bluff doesn't feel amazing. But if I jam and he folds a 4, then suddenly the bluff starts to feel good. So it's hard to know how my opponent is actually going to respond. It might be a spot where we should just never bluff because this opponent might be just getting to the river with hands that he's always heroing with and obviously always beats king high. In game, I wasn't 100%. Going through my head as well was I've just sat down at this cash game. I don't want to err on the side of caution in a spot where I think the jam is theoretically good without knowing my opponent. And also there is some nice value in it being a stream game in the fact that I'm showing that I'm capable of taking these spots, which it then demonstrates to the whole table, well, next time I'm in this spot and I do go all in on the river or I do fire the third barrel, the second barrel, whatever it is, well, I played king 6 that way in that hand, so I'm definitely capable of bluffing. So I think it is nice to establish that image at the table as well, as long as it is also theoretically sound. I wouldn't just go crazy here and think I'm going to take a random bluff because I want to set up an image. But if I know that, at least in my head, a solver will approve of this, then that's my license to think, well, I'm sure it will work out. And if he happens to overcall and it was a paddle in practice against this player, well, I've learnt my lesson. And if he snap called me with ace high, then obviously I would have to adjust. But given the hand he's got, I don't necessarily think it's that conclusive because he has an easy call on the river, he beats value. But it's hard to know. I was just pretty confident I was always going to go for it here. I never run into it, so be it.
The other thing to take into account, does Brandon know Vinny? Has Brandon played with Vinny before? Is he aware of who Vinny is? And does move all in, and Vinny with the snap call, and Vinny's going to show him the 10-8, lovely little check back on the flop.
Yeah, it didn't go my way this time. He was trapping, and the trap worked. If he thinks I'm over bluffing, I think it would be a better response to just check back more with like an 8 and then over hero, or check back more with a 10 and over hero, as opposed to this combo. But we are at that stack depth where, like I said, he can still play for stacks no matter what, so I'm sure it's fine. Let's have a look at what the solver would do. So I'm here in GTO Wizard now, and obviously that was a £5, £5, £10, £20, £40 triple straddle game, so it's not going to be a perfect analysis, but I can just use my effective stack in this game, and if we say essentially it's folded around to me in the small blind, we're playing £20, £40, there is an ante, so that kind of operates like an MTT essentially. There's about another big blind in the middle from the other blinds. I think using the approach of I'm 25 bigs effective in an MTT, using the theory of that is going to be pretty spot on. Folds to me in the small blind, you can see this is our theoretical strategy. Green is call, orange is raised to 3 big blinds, so a slightly smaller raise than I chose. Interesting to note there, that I could have just raised to 3x. And purple is just jam, so you have some open jams here for 25 bigs. Makes sense with so much in the middle. These hands are kind of awkward to play out of position. The small pairs as well. And blue is just open fold, so I'm not doing very much folding here. King 6, the hand that I've actually got, you can see that it doesn't mind. It slightly prefers the limp, and it's happy to raise the 3 bigs. So given that I raised to a bigger size, it would, I assume, would raise slightly less often. So I might have been overdoing this spot with the King 6 and raising slightly too much. I think as long as I'm not always doing something, or like always raising all of these hands or always limping all of these hands, it's pretty hard to exploit my strategy. I'm going to say that we open to 3 big blinds, which is slightly off because I have 3.5, but close enough. And as you'll see, 10-8 offsuit, pure call. So that's pretty good so far. 10 of hearts, 8 of clubs, 4 of diamonds. So this is my flop strategy. I'm going to move my camera outside just for a sec to show you this. These are all the bet sizes, so you can see I'm checking 40% of the time. I'm implementing a lot of different bet sizes, which is quite a complicated strategy. I would say simplify this to 2 bet sizes, go for like a medium to big size and a small size. Or if you want just medium, like if you wanted this to approach the spot with, when I bet, I'm just always going to choose about 2/3, and that's the only size I'm going to choose. Maybe some of these tiny bets go into checks. I think that's a nice way to simplify this if you wanted to actually approach this in a game theory way. But the way I think about this is, okay, I've got license to bet up to 90%. I've got license to check, I've got license to bet small, so you can just think, what does my hand want to do if you're against someone that's not going to exploit you? Or you can think, what do I want to do to best exploit my opponent in-game as well? And in-game with my hand, I've got complete trash. So if my hand wanted to bet all the time, I think I should still bet. But if it checks sometimes, then checking more of the time might make more sense against someone that's going to be a bit stickier. So if we look at King 6, you can see on the right, this is each combo. And you can see that King 6 mainly likes to bet when it has 2 suits on the board. So you can see heart club, heart diamond, diamond heart. So basically when you don't have a spade, you can see when it does have a spade, it checks more. And this is why I was talking about with my analysis at first, that the King of Spades is just not, it's a card that they're going to fold, and it's a card that doesn't have good barrels, and it doesn't interact with their backdoor flush draws. So it's just not a hand that we want to bet as often. The specific hand we had, King of Spades, 6 of diamonds, looks like he mainly wants to check. His 10-8 here, you can see pretty much always wants to bet. It's a really strong hand, but the EV difference isn't ridiculous. 11.65 to 11.68, so it's not going to be a big deal if you decide to check this hand, and if you think it's an exploit, or if you're just more content in the line where you check back with a good hand here. Like, I don't think it's crazy. I would mainly bet and start checking back with some weak hands. Like you can see there's some 8x here, 10x pretty much always betting here, just because it's effectively the nuts. Well, not the nuts, but it's just happy to go broke, and once it's happy to go broke, it's vulnerable. There's so many overcards, so the solver just wants to put money in now when I have loads of check calls and loads of hands which can put money in that are worse. 10-8 is actually choosing a smaller bet size than some of these other hands. That's just because it's so strong and it blocks the board. So check isn't going to be that much different. We get the 5 of diamonds turn. There is some overbetting going on in my shoes here, which is a little bit surprising because I don't need to overbet to get stacks in. So you can see I've got 22 big blinds according to the solver here, and there's 7 big blinds in the middle. So I don't actually need to overbet to play for stacks, so that surprised me a little bit, because I wouldn't have been implementing an overbet strategy here. I would have been just choosing the bet size I did. Looking at the hands that like to do that, it's the hands that were really strong on the flop, like your ace 10, your king 10, pocket kings, and then jack 7 going for a bluff, 10-4, 6-3, which is a straight draw. I imagine there's some diamond combos going on here as well that turn the flush draw. And yeah, even king 8 going for an overbet on the turn, which goes to show how strong it is. Once the flop checks back, he's not really supposed to have a 10 or a better hand very often, so a king 8 is just like, yeah, I've got the nuts, I'm going to bet really big and happy to play for stacks. Not all the time, but at least sometimes. So the combo I've got king 6. Can see a lot of purple there. It looks like if we narrow down the combos, I don't know how clear it is to see all the different combos here. This is the combo we had, king of spades, 6 of diamonds. It does actually like it likes to overbet sometimes. It likes to bet 90% sometimes, and it chooses a smaller bet size the rest of the time where it checks. So you can't really go wrong with this hand. Checking the non-diamond combos makes a lot more sense because you've just got less interaction with the board. You can see king of diamonds and 6 of diamonds pretty much always betting here, or at least almost always. So I'm happy I found a bet with this hand. I think it makes sense. I could have actually gone a little bit bigger. I went 220 into about 300, which is like 75%. So let's look at both. Let's first see that I did 2/3 and see if it makes a difference. So here's 10-8. If it gets there this way, is always raising the turn. But again, if you want to trap, I don't think it's going to be a huge EV difference. Queen of clubs river. What's my king 6 doing now? It's always bluffing, but it's not always going all in. My river jam was 640 into 740, which is like what, 85% pie-ish. Whereas I'm kind of surprised to see that it is actually putting this bluff into the 1/3 size mainly by the looks of things. It is going all in with some other king 6s. It's a bit kind of random. I will look at it if I bet 90% on the turn because that'll give us a better stack to pot ratio. If we look at the EV, it's a very low EV hand. It's worth 0.02, 0.03 depending on what we do, and the bet size is not making that much difference. So if we're against someone that's going to overcall, I could see why not taking this bluff would make more sense. What I like to do now is, okay, let's say I do go all in. Let's look at the hands that I'm supposed to be called against, and do I think he's going to overcall or undercall? For a start, let's look at some of the weaker hands. So king 4, already folding sometimes. King 5, folding sometimes. High, so there's ace jack suited, that might have gone in pre, but it is supposed to hero the river sometimes with ace high. Ace 5 and ace 4 suited calling, so it's mainly this 4 and 5x that I'm worried about. If they're supposed to already fold a little bit in theory, and he's going to always call with them, then suddenly my bluff isn't going to be very good if he's just always going to get to the river with a pair. There's going to be 9-7 that gets there if it doesn't bet the flop. There's going to be the hands like jack 7. There's going to be the hands like a7 and a6. You have to look at the combos in this case, and if he always gets to the river this way with a hand like a7 offsuit, and he never heroes the river with a7 high, that's 16 combos that I'm making fold there because there's so many more combos of offsuit hands. So although he might always call with some of these suited 5x and 4x, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad if he has more offsuit combos. So if he gets to the river every time with jack 7 because he always calls the turn, he obviously never calls the river jack 7, but it would have bluffed me, so it would have still won the hand against me, then that can then increase the bluff value. And it's really hard to say, like pocket 7s, I feel like that's going to jam on me pre, pocket 6s, 3-2 suited, yeah, that's a hand that might have bluffed me. Some of these pair of 5s and pair of 4s type hands, and this is the main deal breaker really with this hand, is if he's always going to snap call me when he's got a 5 or a 4, then I think that makes the bluff bad, and in hindsight, it's possible that's true. I'm not going to say that this is the most amazing bluff. I think given the solver does it at least sometimes, it's never going to be like directly bad, and given the info I had, it's never going to be a punt. But that doesn't mean it was the best play. You can see here that king jack high is also supposed to call sometimes. Yeah, these are the main questions I want to ask myself. Are all these folds actually going to be folds? The only thing I want to do now is, let's say that I bet 90% on the turn instead because we get a slightly more accurate stacked pot ratio for the river. How much difference is it going to make to my EV, given that the pot is now so much bigger and I'm risking less? Because that was if I overbet jammed by 1.1 times pot. His 10-8 is supposed to call instead when I bet bigger, which makes sense because it's just more likely I'm in on the river. I've got less than pot left. We'll get the queen of clubs, so does that mean I'm supposed to bluff more or less? And now you can see pretty much pure going for the all-in with king 6 suddenly when I've only got 80% pot on the river, so that's nice and reassuring for me that if I do get to the river this way and the stacked pot ratio ends up like this, then it's pretty much mandatory go. And I did just want to look at what my worst value bets are. I was thinking ace 10, king 10, yeah. But actually jack 10 always going for value. Wow, pocket 9s always going for the value jam. That's pretty sick, value jam, pocket 9s on the queen river. Even ace 8 is there a little bit. I think I could see myself finding king 10. I don't think I would have even found the jack 10, so this is a spot I might be missing value. Obviously, if you're against someone that calls too much, then you're just going to make more and more value if he's always calling with 4x and 5x and hands like this, if you just go a bit thinner. So these hands are already making EV with the jam, and we saw that some of those 4 and 5x were folding, so it's only going to increase the EV. And you can see the solver does split size on the river. So I was wondering what the weakest value bet we have is. You look at some of these 10% pot bets, even a hand like 7-8 suited going for value, 8-6 offsuit. So third pair with pretty much no kicker, still going for value sometimes for that 10% pot size. I think when you are in spots like this, it's important to think of the theory, but then always add the context onto the end. So the main thing I've learned from this spot, obviously the hand is fine, but if I have that extra info of my opponent is not folding a 4, my opponent is not folding a 5, I just don't need to take these bluffs, because you can see, even though it pure takes the king 6, it's making such a small amount. The difference between check and jam there is pretty big, 0.03 to 0.16. That's a big difference, but it's only 16% of a big blind. If you don't know they're overfolding, I think it's best to go with the fact that they're probably not in live poker, in a fun, splashy live cash game. No one likes to fold. That's it for my analysis here. I think I played the hand fine. I could have opted to just check the turn, but I think given I had the diamond, I think I do like the fact I went for the bet on the time. And then the river, I didn't necessarily have to blast it, even though I can see that it is solver approved. Just given the context, I don't think it was necessary. I think I'm just going to print more value by finding the jams with the pocket nines, finding the jams with the jack 10 suited, obviously finding all the queen x and better hands too, but just going for these thinner jams as well, your 10-9 suited when I get there this way. I think that's where more of the EV is to be had in this spot, as opposed to always finding the king 6 offsuit hand. Yeah, it's a pure bluff, but it's a very low EV bluff, so it's just finding the right opponent. If you're against a reg there, yeah, king 6, completely nailed it. Everything ticks the boxes. If you're against the guy having fun, maybe just give up. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you like this type of analysis, let me know. I can start reviewing more streamed footage hands, especially from GUKPTs, from Grosvenor stuff, because there's so much footage out there, and it's just really fun to see how people play, compare it to how the solver plays, see if we can figure out, is it better or worse to exploit people in this way. So I'm always here to make this sort of content. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.